3 games against Golden State this season for the Phoenix Suns. 3 wins against Golden State this season for the Phoenix Suns. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, how the Suns took down the Warriors in a chaotic night. Bradley Beal's return. Draymond Green ejected. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for making Locked On Suns your first listen to close out your day. Well, I was going to say post-game, but it is already Wednesday morning as I'm recording this, and I'm confusing myself even looking at the calendar. But I appreciate each and every one of you. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube. So wherever you're finding us, hit that follow or subscribe button if you have not done so already. Get a new show in your feed Monday through Friday and become an everydayer right along with me all season long. Get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right here. Today's show brought to you by Gametime, the best place to buy a ticket. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA when you download the Gametime app to get $20 off your first purchase. And we'll be talking more about Gametime as we continue on today, but let's not have any further ado. 119 to 116. The Phoenix Suns beat the Golden State Warriors, and there was a lot going on tonight. Bradley Beal returned. Draymond Green once again ejected for the 3rd time this season alone, which we will get to in time in the Nurk report. Luckily for Draymond, we already have a built-in segment to talk about Jusuf Nurkic shenanigans, and he was involved. And the Suns' offense with Booker and Beal showed, I wouldn't even just say signs of life, but signs of excellence, we'll say. But we're going to start with the moment of the game, as we always do. And it does have to do with Beal, although a moment in time when he was not on the court with Booker, which is the stint that he played in the second half, staggered, where Book was not on the court. And that began at the 1 minute and 10 second mark. The Suns were, at that moment, down 3. All right? So they go on a run to close out the quarter, in which Beal is involved in both of the baskets. An and one driving layup by Jordan Goodwin, which started from a very Wizards last season-like 2-man game with Jusuf Nurkic and Beal, where Nurkic effectively just filling the Kristaps Porzingis lane, where it turns into basically an empty side pick and roll off of a dribble handoff instead of the playmaker setting it up, the guard setting it up. Beal gets downhill. Goodwin kind of rolls up to the top of the arc. Beal finds him. Goodwin actually hesitates a beat too long, but then eventually draws the foul on Chris Paul and finishes the play. And then you had the fall away left baseline jumper that Beal hit, which also became an and one, although he missed the free throw. And just like that, that is 5 straight points, could have been 6, and the Suns are up 1. Fast forward to the 4th quarter, the Suns continue to build their lead up until the 7:38 mark when Beal checks out, Book checks in. The Suns are actually only up 1 at that point. There was a weird lull where the Warriors were kind of hanging around, making some stuff happen, and the beginning of the turnover woes kind of start, and the Warriors cut it. But at one point, when Beal made a pretty heavily contested floater coming off of another screen downhill into the teeth of the defense and gets it to go, the Suns went up 6 at that moment. So from when I keep wanting to say Book, when Beal checked in at the 1 minute and 10 second mark of that 3rd quarter until the 9-minute mark or so of the fourth, when he makes that shot to go up 6, the Suns go from 83 points to 97 points. The Warriors go from 86 points to 91 points. I believe that is a 14-5 run, if my math is correct there. And I don't want to say decided the game, because the Suns did their best to cough this game up anyway. I easily could have picked the fourth quarter. It was deja vu of what happened in the first, well, not the first, but the most recent Golden State game the day before Thanksgiving, when a bench lineup of Warriors players with guys like Guy Santos and Brandon Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis and Moses Moody somehow made it a ball game. It was very similar tonight. I didn't pick that, though, and I do think this stretch, that 14-5 run that Beal led, went a long way toward deciding the game. But beyond all that, the reason I pick it here for the moment of tonight's game is it showed what Beal can be. And to me, Bradley Beal moved better in this game, looked more like a traditional version of himself, the usual version of himself, I'll say, than he did in any of the 3 games he played last time around. And that includes 24 points against the Lakers. Now, one thing I will say is having Booker does a lot to help that as well, right? Because in those other games, the Suns were just in such desperate need of additional ball handling that they went out of their way at times, I think, to have Beal run offense when I just don't think that's what's going to be the best role for him in any version of this team. So maybe that was part of it, but I also think defensively he looked more up to the task, and especially at the very beginning and the very end of the game. I'm not going to say that he made a bunch of game-changing defensive plays. He had 1 steal and 1 block. He had a deflection right away, though, at the beginning. And he was just fighting through screens and playing with an intensity level that I just did not see when Kobe White and, obviously Jalen Williams is a good player, but Jalen Williams in Oklahoma City and some of these other guys were able to score on him. He's not going to be a stopper for this team, but I think that showed me something in addition to the downhill scoring and kind of the change of direction and cutting and 2-man game stuff that he showed. He just moved more like Bradley Beal than he did before. The other part of this stretch that caught my attention that matters here is the lineup context around him. So in the first half, the Suns bench got shellacked, and a big part of that stretch came with Beal on the court with only reserves. If you look in the plus-minus in the box score in this game, Beal was a -15. The biggest runs came in the Booker-only lineups, but a lot of that was because of the first half, that it is so lopsided. In the first half, you had a lineup where, let me get my notes. A professional would have had this out, but it's okay. You had Beal out there with Bol, of course. I couldn't remember if it was Okogie or Goodwin. That's why I wanted to get my notes. It was Goodwin, Gordon, Bol, and Eubanks. So that's basically 3 non-threats on offense, because we know Bol is theoretically a threat, not in reality. He's not somebody who really seems to get up shots or impact the game on that end when he's out there. Eubanks not a shooter, not really an offensive threat unless he's around the basket. And obviously Goodwin had a nice game, but as far as creating offense at a high level or making threes consistently, that's not his game, and he was 1 of 5 from deep. Gordon also just did not have a very good game tonight. So that lineup did not do Beal any favors. In the second half, what the Suns did, and credit to the coaching staff, Vogel was very open that he challenged the second unit at halftime to beat their matchup and have more of a response to the Warriors' young guys. They also put the right players in place to do that. They had, I believe, Watanabe, if not Bates Diop, as well as Nurkic in those minutes, so that Beal had a little more space to operate, a little bit more playmaking around him, and the results speak for themselves. 15-4 run without Booker in the game, and the Suns take control, give themselves enough of a cushion to eventually win it. Moment of the game. My big takeaway of the game revolves around the Suns' offense and how tonight was just a glimpse of how overpowering they can be, just like it was when we saw just Book and Durant. Let's get into why next. First, today's show brought to you by eBay Motors, and our partners at eBay Motors this season have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to get you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, Josh Lloyd will provide his players that are guaranteed to fit your roster each and every week. So let's see who Josh picked out for this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. You know the drill. Josh knows who's playing more, getting more reps, getting more of an opportunity, and he has them for you. Isaiah Hartenstein. Mitchell Robinson is out 8 to 10 weeks. Hartenstein's going to close and start. Oh, Jericho Sims is starting. We know Hartenstein's the better player. Dante Exum just made 7 threes, I believe, on Tuesday night as I'm recording this. He's playing a lot for an injured Mavs team. Keontae George, which Suns fans know, is a very solid rookie. That Jazz team is also hit with injuries really hard right now. He's playing a lot, producing a lot. Asar Thompson piles up the defensive stats and rebounds. Jonathan Kuminga, we saw him tonight. He is getting minutes, and he's going to fill the box score, even if he makes some mistakes. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball can help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, just like your vehicle. I've bought multiple things from eBay Motors over the time we've been having them as a sponsor, and not because I get a discount or anything, but just because I realize the service is really good. You put your car in, they help you know what fits your vehicle. That's helpful. But they also have stuff nobody else does, including, for me, a wheel cover at a reasonable price, a sunshade, the flap on the interior of the car, which is overpriced a lot of places, unsure about the model in a lot of places. eBay Motors had it. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly, whether it's brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, or whatever your baby needs. eBay Motors has it, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, with these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. The Phoenix Suns offense is coming along. That's my big takeaway from this game, and I'll get into the numbers. I'll get into the details. Before that, a reminder to sign up for the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts, where you can get my first reaction to all Suns news and rumors, exclusive game day content and observations, video breakdowns once per week with a private link sent directly to your phone only for subscribers, where I go deep on something in Suns world from the games of the week. Of course, this week's is going to be looking at how Beal's return alongside Booker and hopefully Durant has pieced together what we're learning about how the coaching staff wants to use them and more. You can also respond to me directly, one-on-one engagement, just literally text me back, and I see those messages and can text you back. Join the Locked On Suns Insiders now and be in the know all the time. The link to sign up is in the show description below, so click that now or visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns. Again, link in the show description, click that there, or visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns. Let's get into it. Some stats about the Suns offense tonight. They did a lot of the things that they needed to do, right? They competed on the offensive glass, got a few second chances, especially when the Warriors went small. Nurkic had 3. Some of the other guys chipped in, who we'll get to later in the show. They didn't turn the ball over. They generated a lot of threes, and they got to the free throw line. As far as vital signs for an offense, the pulse is there. The breathing is working. the blood pressure is good. Those are the things you need to do, the things you need to execute at in order to compete on a nightly basis in the NBA. But I would say overall, this was far from the Suns' best offensive performance that they can muster, right? As far as their first shot offense and their half-court execution and everything else. They also only got 9 fast break points and only 15 points off turnovers. So there's a lot more meat on the bone, and yet the Suns put up a 117.8 offensive rating, which would equate with the Suns right now are at a 117.4 offensive rating. So what you just watched the Suns do, which you probably were confused by and is muddled down by the late game mistakes, was a better offensive performance in terms of efficiency per possession than they've had on average all season long. But let's get more specific than that, because that's just numbers and ethereal imagining and everything else. Let's get specific. I thought that Booker was predictably able to get to his spots wherever, whenever. I mentioned on the audio exclusive game preview show that I'm doing on every game day, 15 to 20 minutes, getting you all the info you need for specifically the game, that the Warriors were going to be unable and unlikely to defend Devin Booker. And I was right. His approach early on, though, was to pretty much take what the defense was giving. You had a couple of key Josh Okogie threes in that stretch. Jase Medical airballed his first one and then made a couple himself in the first half. And that went a long way toward keeping the Suns afloat, even though they were down at halftime. In the second half, once Beal got going and the Warriors weren't able to go small like they had hoped because Draymond Green got ejected, which I promise we're getting to, Booker went into score mode a little bit more, had a couple pull-up threes, got to the basket, everything else. Devin Booker shot better than 50% from the field, had 7 assists and just 2 turnovers. He, outside of the Lakers game, he is becoming fairly bad game proof because the roster around him is better. His approach is smarter. He's more patient, more balanced and versatile with his scoring game. And so a bad game for him probably just looks like some forced shots, some missed shots, and a bad game overall for the team. But the days of just misreading the defense, coughing up the ball, charges and awkward shots and offensive fouls and I should have said turnovers, those are mostly gone. And that's why I went out of my way in the insider video breakdown that I did last week and multiple times on the podcast to say that Lakers game was an aberration. And I think we saw that again tonight. So when you add that, the possession game stats that I talked about, Beal being an outlet and having a better game than the box score would show, and those roster developments, and Durant wasn't even on the court, you have to be optimistic. Again, with how weird this game was, how many players were still missing. I mean, Grayson Allen and Kevin Durant are probably 2 of the 4 best offensive players on the Suns. Maybe 5, if you want to say Nurkic. They still posted an offensive rating better than their season-long average. When this team is healthy, with Durant on the court and Allen in the rotation, and everybody playing together and off one another, I don't see how you stop it. I'm unfazed by the first quarter of the season. I thought that would be the case when the Suns put this roster together. Thought that would be the case when we saw them in preseason. And even though we still have not actually seen it, I'm fully of the belief that this team will not really be possible to guard once it all comes together. Let's close out the show with the Nurk Report featuring Draymond Green and our young forward breakout watch centered on Jordan Goodwin and Chimezie Metu. Next, first, today's show brought to you by Gametime, the best place to buy any ticket for any event. Here's why. Gametime took all the stuff you hate about ticketing, ticket buying, and they said, all right, heard, we got this. Don't sweat it. Say less. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, and Gametime takes that seriously. Fast and easy way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, and theater. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat directly in the app, and a best price guarantee allows Gametime to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. What I love most is the view from the seat. I'm the type of person that was looking for websites that had that stuff 10 years ago, before it was popular, before people realized it existed. People would just upload it on random forums and threads and different things. And I would look. I bought a ticket one time to Dodger Stadium to see a playoff game, and rest assured I looked that up. Gametime has it in the seat, has it in the app from your seat before you buy it. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money as well. Deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals for football, basketball, baseball, and more. The Gametime guarantee also means you get the best price. So if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will then credit you 110% of the difference for the miscue. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download their app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's close out the show. The Nurk Report. I think this is only the second time I've done a Nurk Report. Him and Eubanks, man, I will say they certainly get chippy. They certainly want smoke. But even if that's true, what happened with Draymond Green has no explanation, no reasonable explanation. You could tell Draymond from the very beginning, whether it was Nurkic or Eubanks, was just physical, bothered. He was, in his normal routine with the referees, piling up personal fouls. The Suns were also playing off of him pretty considerably. They put Booker on him to start the game, and they didn't even really guard him. And Draymond took a couple threes, turned it over inside on a drive. I'm sure that contributed to his frustration. And then in the third quarter, I believe he got into some sort of dust-up, we'll call it, with Eubanks in the first half. But it is now 12:30 a.m., and my memory is not even what it was at the beginning of this podcast. So third quarter comes around. They're on the Warriors sideline, corner basically, and during an inbounds play, I'm legitimately doubting that I'm getting this recounting correct. So please pardon me if I'm getting these details wrong. Draymond spins as if he's doing a video game move and just completely smacks Nurkic across the face. And it would almost have to be an accident if it were not so concrete of a hit and if it were not Draymond Green. Nurkic falls to the ground. Don't think it was a flop, although guys were flopping in this game, and I'll, on both sides, including one by Nurkic, which I believe was against Draymond. Yeah, 6:15 mark of the second quarter, Nurk flops on a loose ball, gets Draymond on the foul, and gets into the bonus early. But if it were not Draymond and it were not that, it is so cartoonish that I almost can't believe it. And yet there it was. Just the most overt hit you'll ever see. Right to the face. Again, Nurkic did not fake it. And Vogel marches all the way over to the site of the scene of the crime. Chris Paul and Eric Gordon and Steve Kerr are kind of crowding around. Draymond goes and sits on the bench. The refs immediately review it. The crowd is apoplectic. There were Warriors fans actually and Suns fans. The seats for media that I had tonight are the ones right in the lower bowl, just primo location. So we're right there with fans. And, they can see we have computers and everything else. They see us reacting to the play. And they ask, please turn the camera around, or the video around, the screen around. And shout out to Shane Young from Forbes, who just recently moved to Phoenix and has been at Suns games this week. He shows them his laptop of the play we had just watched, the slow-mo replay of everything going on TNT. And even the Warriors fans were like, yeesh, that's a foul. That is a technical, that is a flagrant, whatever it is, he's going to be ejected. And of course, it turns into a flagrant 2 because it was excessive and unnecessary contact, and Draymond gets ejected. Gone. He left without much argument, and so to me, I think he knew. And there's something to be said for maybe he didn't intend for the contact to be so specific to the face or such straight up just fat hit. I don't know how else to say that. Again, it's 12:40 now. Maybe he didn't. I don't really care. The lack of care for the other players on the court, it doesn't matter what your intention was specifically. You put yourself in a situation with your body movement and your behavior and your temperament that it allowed that hit to happen. It put another player in harm's way, outside the scope of basketball. That was not a basketball play in any way, shape, or form. It is just, I'm not this type of sappy person, and I don't mean this in the terms of for the love of the game or there's kids around or any of that crap. But when I say it's disrespectful to the game, what I mean is that you're going out there as a professional athlete to compete, play a game for a living, entertain fans, give your city and your fan base a sense of pride, lock arms with your teammates and do the best you can to honor them. And when it turns into a spectacle like it has become with Draymond and how it gets in those moments and a level of, I don't want to say violence because that's too harsh for what happens most of the time with him, but I'll say a level of physicality and a lack of control that diminishes the whole thing. It turns the basketball game into pro wrestling. It turns it into a street game. I don't mean streets I mean playground basketball. And it just isn't okay. So you're going to hear a million takes about that from a million people this week. Draymond might get suspended. But I do this show. Been covering the league for a while. I've seen a lot of Warriors games, seen a lot of Draymond games, and I do a national basketball show. I care about this stuff, and I don't think it makes sense to do a podcast tonight and not talk about it. So there you go. Last but not least, young forward breakout watch. Chimezie Metu, Jordan Goodwin. Metu gets the start in this game. Team high plus 29. Frank Vogel joked that it was a mulligan on that first airballed 3, which I'm perfectly happy with. And I would have to go back and watch in more detail to see how Metu did defensively. I don't remember a lot of moments, but sometimes that can be good. The Suns started him on Wiggins. Wiggins did not do much. Now, Wiggins often has that happen with him, but Metu didn't make any glaring mistakes. His man didn't go off, and good things seemed to happen when he was on the court. Check, check, and check. I don't know if he'll... It doesn't seem like Durant will play on Wednesday, and the Suns are going up against another switchable, big in terms of their wings and forwards having size team in Brooklyn on Wednesday. So I would think Metu probably starts again if Durant does not play. I would think we'll see what happens with Okogie, who has a right hip injury, and it's unlikely less than 24 hours from now that he would play another basketball game. So there will already be one change to the starting lineup, but I don't think Metu will be one. Who could that be? Well, potentially Jordan Goodwin, although I'm sure they like his playmaking in that staggered rotation to be out there with Beal or Booker, depending, but he played very, very well. He got the Curry matchup in the second half. He got to several loose balls. He was a big part of the Booker-led third quarter run, and it just seems like, I don't know, Okogie is a better defender than Goodwin, but the amount that Okogie is better than Goodwin on defense is less than the amount that Goodwin is better than Okogie on offense. So, as we look toward a future where Beal is now back, Grayson Allen is nearing a return, although Vogel said a few days on that one. I'm going to maintain that Goodwin should be getting minutes over Okogie until I'm proven otherwise. And tonight was just another example of that. That'll wrap us up. Don't want to go too much longer. Enjoy your Wednesday. Suns basketball continues, a back-to-back against the Brooklyn Nets, so stay tuned for the audio exclusive game preview later on Wednesday. Don't forget to sign up to the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts at the link down below or at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns, and I will catch you guys throughout the day on Wednesday. Thank you.